Alright, so we'll proceed with today's topic. So today, you have an issue with a match transformation. Can you quickly describe your issue, Adil? Okay, so the reason is you need to cross-check if the company name column that we are using is available in the input. If it is available in the input, then go to the options, click on best practices, click on edit options, and in the edit option click on firm and just make sure your company name is the correct field name that you are given here. Alright, so once you give the proper field name from the drop down, then it will work. Okay. Just cross-check that one, Adil. So I think the main problem with that one is the column name that I have used is not correct. So it is not company name, but it is compand name, right? So that is the reason why the system is not able to recognize, I guess. So go to Options tab, Best Practices, Edit Options, and in the pop-up window, go and select the match criteria. Under the match criteria, you have the firm name, firm as a criteria, and then go and select the right column name. It should work. Sorry. Yeah, any more questions, guys? I was just jumping into the topic. So if you don't have any questions, we will look into today's topic, which is manipulating the XML data. So we will look into this two XML PDF documents that talk about how to handle the XML data. So what is an NRTM structure? So you will have something like the parent and the child columns, right? And this also can have a nested structure. So it is like this will be the parent, and for every parent there are child, and for one child again you will have another child. So this can be your hierarchical information, and this is a way in which we will keep less volume of data. So if you want to put this in a tabular structure, you will take record 1 and this record, and for this one this record, and for record 2 you will say this record, and for these two again the children. So it will be a repeated information. So just to bypass that, this will be your nested structure. This is not your plain structure, but this is your nested structure. So we have seen a quick example on how to handle the XML data using a query transformation, XML map, and XML pipeline transformations. So we will start with the same example. So these are the only documents that I found initially on the internet which speaks about the XML data, how do you handle that, and it also gives you some sample XML files which you can download from the supplement files here. But I guess these files are moved from this location to some other location, so I'll share the zip folders with you so that you can share it with your, you can just extract that into your desktop and then you can start working on that. So this document, initially manipulating the XML data, this talks about the definition, the correctness and documents of XML. So it gives you a little GAN of XML if we are not into that one. But it is simple markup language, extended markup language, which is written in the form of tags, right? So it has a little introduction to XML. Right, so we will directly jump with the scenarios and see what is happening, and say, let us say this is an XML data. This talks about a person, right, and person's age is 36, eyes colors is ice color is blue, and the name of the person is Michelle. Right. So this is how the data is saved. So referring back to what we spoke, right, we saw this XML data which talks about the postal codes, and this postal code has two, or this data has, or this code has two postal codes. One is SA019TB and the second one is D150LQ, and SA019TB postal code has three addresses and D150LQ has two addresses. So there are two types of XML files that you will get. One is your XSD or DTD, XML standard definition or data type definition. So these are the structure files, and the other one that you will get is .xml, which is, this will be the .xml file, which is your data file. So this files, if you see any file with an extension .xml, this will hold the data, and if you see anyone with an XSD or a DTD definition or an extension, they will hold your structures. So we have few scenarios here that we will build up. Alright, so the first scenario that we want to read is like read the data from a nested structure and put it in a flat structure, which we already did. Right, this talks about the screenshot. So this is your nested structure diagram, how it looks. I think I should reduce this. This is a little more. But I think now I should be able to see it properly. Now once you get the file, we'll see all the scenarios live on the system. I'm just taking you to the scenario. The first one that we are trying to do is read data from, read the data from the postcode address XML file and write it into a table called XML or nest. Right. So let us go and build the scenario. For that, I will use the second project that we created, which is project real time. So create a job, and we are still dealing with the batch job, not the real-time jobs. We'll look into the real-time jobs in this scenario or in this topic. So I call this as read XML. I think there is a name conflict. Oops. I'm calling this job name as job underscore read XML data, df underscore read XML data. Now we know how to add the XML files. We go to the formats tab in your local object library, select the nested file, right click and go for new, and then you have to either add a DTD, XML schema, which is nothing but XSD or JSON. These three are the definitions, or you can just right click in the formats tab, go for new, and then go and select this one. So this is, remember this image, it has more options, but when you specifically select nested schema and do a context menu, you get only these three. Or the third approach is go to project, new, and you can either select DTD, XML or JSON. Now I have these files on my desktop. Go and select a new DTD. Browse the file, which is postcode address, open, then go and select. This is the root node which will be given to you by the data owner. They will tell you which is the root node and which is the leaf node. So this is the postcode address file. Now remember, when I use an XML file into a data flow, we have four options: file source, file target, message source, and message target. We spoke about this. When it is in a batch job, it should be a file source or a file target, and if it is in a real-time job, it should be a message source or a message target. And once you add the XML file to your data flow, then point it to your output file. So click on that one, click on the file drop down, go for select file, and then select the postcode address file. Now if you look at the extension, this is .xml. I'm just repeating what we did earlier. Now you can click on the magnifying glass and have a look at the data. So this is postcode group. Double click on that, it will show you.
Okay.
Yes? Yeah?
Can you do it one more time, please?
Sorry?
Can you please do it one more time? This the last time.
Okay, so you click on the file name, click on the drop down, go for select file, and this is where your XML files are present. Right, so your XML inbound directory. Select the file, click on open, and then just go back. That's it.
Okay, Anish.
Yeah. Once it is done, you click on the magnifying glass. It will open the table. Double click on the postcode. It will show you the two postal codes. Double click on the first postal code. It will show you the address. And double click on the second postal code. It will show you the addresses related to the second postal code. So now this is a nested structure. The first assignment that we will do is qt underscore unnest. We are trying to unnest the structure into a flat structure. So connect your XML source to the query transformation. Open that. So the same activity can be done with XML map with pretty much ease. So select from the group node, drag and drop it to the right hand side, schema out, then select the node, right click and make it current and unnest it. So before you do any unnest, you have to make that segment as current and select this one. One second, Adil, I'll get to your question. Alright. So why do you have to link the XML file when you already created the nested schema file? So listen, there are two files that we are connecting. So this one is an XSD file. So if you look at the extension, this is a DTD or an XSD. So this is the definition, the structure file. And this, if you just link a structure to your data services window or a designer, probably it will be of no use. We have to link the data file as well. So the first step that we are trying to do is connect the schema, which is the structure or the framework, to data services designer, and once you use it in a job, you point it to a data file which actually has the data. So did I answer your question, Adil? Is that clear? Or yeah, okay, good. Now we have made each and every segment current, and immediately once we make that current, unnest that one, then create a template table and call it as XML Data read. Save it in your target data store. Validate that. No errors found. Run your job or execute your job, and once the job is done, the target table will be loaded with the same information in the flat structure. So it is successfully completed. Now this is converted into a flat structure. The second assignment that we will do is capture the postal codes in separate table and addresses in separate table. So how do you split a single XML file's data into the flat structures, right? Two separate flat structures. So to look at the diagram of that one, I'll just quickly scroll down to we'll get to the real-time job question in a bit, Chandra. Okay, yeah. So as of now, we are still running a batch job. We did not go to the topic of a real-time job. So we will get to the real-time job. I'll tell you the difference between a batch job and a real-time job in a bit. Alright, so this is the second example that we are, or second scenario that we are trying to build, where we will read the data from the postcode address and write it into two separate tables, capture the postcode separately and address separately. So I'll create another batch job, job underscore split XML, create a data flow, data flow underscore split XML. Open this one. You can still use the same postcode address file, make it as a file source since it is a batch job. Then next mandatory step, point it to the data file, which is postcode address.xml. Go back. Now, in the future scenario, or in the next scenario that we'll be looking at, I'll be combining these two demo tables and write it into another XML file as a target. So I will create an ID, which I'm calling as add ID in the query transformation, or I'll call it as a postcode ID, which will help me to join them together. So you drag the same thing, some postcode group to this, some schema in to the schema out, select the postcode group, make it current, and now you don't do, you can do an unnest as well. But before you do an unnest, you create a new output column and call it as postcode ID, and its type of integer, and it is populated with the function generate row number. Right, and then select the postcode which is already in current and you unnest that one. Now if you go back, add two query transformations, get p code, get address. So connect your query transformation, add ID to both your get postal code and address. If you open the postal code query transformation, this is already unnested, so there is no parent node on top of it, so you can directly drag and drop it to the schema out. And now this postcode ID is created at the same level, so you can also select this and drag and drop it to the schema out. Now you have the postcode ID and postcode in one query transformation. Just click on back, and here you can drag the postcode ID, and you cannot drag the address to the schema out, just only this address, because it is in a nested structure. You will not be in a position to drag it. So what we will do is you'll drag it from the nested structure and repeat the same process, make it current, and once it is current you can select that and unnest that one. So you are unnesting, which is in a nested structure, you are converting back to a flat structure. So I'll call this as demo underscore p code, and the other table as address. Now connect postal code query transformation to the table and address query transformation to the table, validate it. Now you run the job and you will see the postal codes in one table with postcode ID, which is 1 and 2. So for the first postal code, the postcode ID is 1, and for the second postal code, the postcode ID is 2. Similarly, if you look at this address table, you will see the same postcode assigned for 1 is assigned for all the addresses that belong to the postal code 1, and 2 is assigned to all the postal codes that is assigned to the postal code 2. So the reason why that is done is because we have created that at the postal code level. This and this are in the same level, so this is nested every time it iterates, it creates the same postcode ID for the address. So that is the reason why we have the data like this. So this is how you split a single XML file into two different flat structures. Right. So the third scenario that we will look at is reading the data from these database tables and write them back into an XML file. And also we will see how do we populate an additional segment. So let us say if your XML file, target file, has an additional segment, so how do you handle that? Okay, so this is the scenario that we'll be building. Now we'll add a new XML file as an output file, and it has a different structure. So we will try to push the data from this table to a XML structure, and also it has an additional structure. So we will handle that using row generation. So remember, we spoke about the row generation transformation. When there is no specific source and you have to address something, a structure, then you can use row generation. So I'll call this job as job underscore write XML, because we are trying to create an XML file using this df underscore write XML. Open this one. Now this time the source tables are database tables, not the XML file. So I'll select demo address and demo postal code, drag and drop them into my data flow. Now you need to add a target flat file. So go to the nested schema, right click, go for new, and go for XML schema. Click on browse and go to the folder where your XML files are present. So postcode address 2 is the XML schema file. Look at the extension, it is XSD. Open that one. So which is nothing but your structure. So I'll call this as address 2 because the same name is not accepted. So I call this as postcode address 2 or target file. So select this file, drag and drop it into your data flow, and now this is your file target. Still we are in a bad job, so it is your file target. Connect, place it on your right hand side, and this also has the same formula. You open that and point it to a folder where this files has to be created. I'm calling this as XML Data 1 in the outbound directory, and the output file extension is .xml. So it should go and create a file called XML Data 1. As of now, if you go and check out the outbound directory, you don't have any XML files. Once this job is done, it will go and create an XML file. Just go back, and now if you open this XML file and see this, it has postcode group, and you can feed this postal code, and it has postcode group NT, and you can feed this, but it also has an additional segment which has created by, created date, and created comments. So we don't have the third source, but if you look at the structure, it has 3 segments, 1, 2, and the third one, right? But we don't have the third source. So what we will do, go to the transforms tab, open the platform transformation, select row generation, drag and drop it, and you will use this as a third source. Now get a query transformation, connect it with all the 3 source tables or all the 3 sources. Alright, and connect it to the XML file. Now since you are connected to the XML file, if you open the query transformation, on the right hand side you see the nested structure, on the left hand side you'll see the flat structure. Now you have to do a mapping, right? So select the postcode group, make it current, And now since you are feeding it from different sources, now you need to make sure that you point it to the right source. So demo postcode is the source table that feeds to the postcode group. Then go to the mapping tab, select the postcode and drag and drop it onto the postcode on the schema out. Now it is mapped. The same way, go to this one, make it current, go to the from tab and just make sure it is only checked for address. Then select the address, drag and drop it on the address field, and it is mapped. So, but since it is nested, you should give a proper where condition where the postcode ID of the address table is equal to the postcode ID of the postcode table. So with this one we will be able to get the right information, right address for the postcodes. And for the third segment, document details, select that, make it current, and then go to the from tab and you can uncheck these two. Just keep it with the row generation because it doesn't have any source. Go to the mapping tab. Now you can hard code these values. Created by Samuel, created date, so the data type is date, so you can pass a system date variable, and created commands such as like demo on XML data. Right, so this is how we address an additional segment for which we don't really have a source. Right, so go back, validate your job to see if there are any errors. Now go ahead and execute your job, write XML, and once the job is done, you should be in a position to see the data created on the outbound directory. Which is XML data, and you can open that with a notepad or with a web page to see the data in a proper manner. Once again, let me open that with Visual Studio. Alright, so it points to my desktop, and finally alright, thinks there's some error with the job. Let me go and check the data from this one. I'll click on the magnifying glass. Yeah. See previous display error message. There is a failure. Okay. Make it current, and the from tab for this one. Just row generation is enough. Postcode, address, that's row generation. Now let us rerun the job. Delete and recreate the file. it is good. Now you double click on the postcode group and you'll see the two postal codes. Double click on the first one, you'll see the address. Remember, this is our target file, and there is another segment called as document details. So we'll check out the document details. Double click on that. It gives you Samuel, created on today's date, and the demo on XML data. Alright, so you want to cross check the file, go to the outbound directory, refresh it, open with a notepad, and this is the data, right? So it has SA019TB, flat 1, flat 2 and flat 3 as address, and for D150LQ it has Ethan Hall and the Garden Cottages, and it is created by Samuel on today's date, right, and demo on XML data. So this is how we read the data from a database table and write it into an XML file. So this is one more scenario. And the next scenario that we will be looking at is read the data from the database table and write it into a database table, but write it in the form of an XML file. So which is nothing but write it in the form of XML code. So we will read the data from the same database tables, and then we will write that into a database table. But the data, once you open the table and see, you'll be able to look at the XML code which handles the data. So for that process, I'll utilize the same job. So instead of this, I'll remove this one. Then I will add one more query transformation, because for me to write the data into a database table, I need to have one more nested structure. So I'll copy this from the query and add it here. Add one more layer. Then okay, convert the character, connect this, and in this query transformation, create a new output column and call it as XML underscore data, and call it as varchar 1000. Now select the column, go to the mapping, go to the functions, and here you have something called as conversion functions. Click on that one, and here I think you should have load to XML. Click on next, then select the nested structure. So look at the column name and the description name of the nested table whose data is converted into XML. So click on the drop down and select the column from where you're reading that one. The name of this table here is technically query, the nested structure. And then the schema name, the structure name onto which you are trying to add, which is like postcode address 2, that is the structure. And enable validation. See, the moment I click on these columns, the below description is changing. So name of the DGD schema. The third one is enable validation. If you want to enable validation, you can put 1 or you can pass 0. XML header, you can pass 2 single quotes, that is not a double quote, 2 single quotes, and replace null with string with 2 single quotes. Is top element yes, and maximum size is 1026. So remember, you have to point to the query from where you are reading the nested structure, then the structure, the schema definition. If you want to enable validation, you can pass 1 if not 0, then 2 single quotes if there is any header which is null, and replace the null string with 2 single quotes. Is top level element 1 and the maximum size is 1026. Click on finish, and this creates a function. If you want to modify this function, you can select, right click, and modify function call. So any function that you use in data services, you can go and modify that at the later stages. So DB XML data, and save it in your target database or data store. Validate it. Now go and execute your job, and once your job is done, the expectation is you go and open your database table, and it should have data in it, but the data is in the form of an XML code but not in the form of rows and columns. So if you want to verify this, you can right click on that one and say view cell, and you can just scroll it down. Alright, so again you'll see the same data SA019 TB flat 1, flat 2 and flat 3, then D150LQ, Eaton Hall and the Garden Cottages, created by Samuel on today's date, and demo on XML data. Now the next scenario that we will try to do is read the data from this table that we just created, the database table, the data which is in the form of XML, and create an XML file out of it. Now we will not use any templates, but we will use data services tool palette, where we have something called as template XML, nested schema template. We will utilize that and write the data back into the XML structure. Yeah, load to XML function, it converts the data from an XML pattern and converts that into a single string, varchar string. Right, so the next scenario is this one. Read the data from the database table, which has XML format structure, and then write it into the actual XML file. So I'll call this as job_read XML read DB XML, then go to the data store, select the DB XML data table as the right table. Now use a query transformation and just let me check. Okay, so in the query transformation schema out, select the schema out level and you go for a new function call, and here you have something called as conversion functions, and in the conversion functions you have something called like extract from XML. So click next, select that function, the field name which has XML data, which is XML data column, and then the structure which is postcode address 2. Enable validation, you can pass 0. Click on next, and these are the error message and error number. You don't need this, so you need these two, postcode group and document. You select them and add to the right hand side and click on finish. So your function will call the structure from this based on the template that you are giving, and it will give you the structure. Now if you don't have an XML XSD file available, you want to create one by yourself, so there is an option called as nested schema template right under your template table in your tool palette. Click on that one, click back on the window, give the name, click on OK. So this creates a template structure on the go, and you can point to the outbound directory and say XML underscore data 2. Save it. So it will go and create a new output file, which is XML data 2. So with this, we read the data from the database table, which is in an XML format, and we are creating our own XML structure. We are not using any pre-built definition. We are using it on the go from the template. And now the job is done. You go to your desktop, outbound directory, your XML data file, open that, and now it has SS019TB, flat 1, flat 2, flat 3, DE150LQ, Eaton Hall and the Garden Cartridges, and created by Samuel on today's date, and demo on XML data. Alright, so these are the different scenarios that are mentioned in the document, which actually helps us to play around with XML structures or nested structures. So it can be your XML files, or it can be your iDocs. They are just the same, the nested structures. So when you have data like this coming into your data services, so you can utilize the options with the query transformation, and you can unnest, nest, and create that into a flat structure or do whatever you want. So that's about this document 1, which is manipulating the XML data. So any questions in this manipulating the XML data? Okay, so these 2 sessions are definitely, I've been keeping these 2 sessions pretty interesting, and I guess you guys will be loving those sessions too. So these 2 will be the final closing sessions, which will give us a quick heads up on HANA. But initially it was like a very interesting class for most of the guys, because most of the guys, they are trying to learn HANA too. But now I believe like some of us are working on HANA in this batch too. So I'll just do a quick introduction to that one and talk about the different provisioning mechanisms and see how data services load data into SAP HANA. And once the data services job is done, we can log into SAP HANA and look at the data. So that we will cover, and after that we will cover the project orientation, and we'll talk about the theory story, and then we will see how we will correct that. So probably I guess like on 3rd we will be done with the training, which is Sunday. So the template table that we created in Data Services Designer are created in the backend databases also. Do we need to create table permission at the backend database? Yeah, so that's absolutely a perfect question, Adil. When you are creating a data store, so when you are triggering a job through data services, which means you are creating through a data store. So this data store has a username and password, and definitely this username should have a privilege to create, alter, drop and recreate tables, because without permission you will get insufficient privileges error. Okay, yeah. So I guess the second document will start it in the next session probably, because technically what we do in the second document is very less, but thing is that it has a little theory and a prerequisites. Again, we will cover a bit of administration part, and then we will go back to the data services management console to see if all the admin parts are enabled, and then we will go to the job, create a real-time job, run it, and then go to the data services management console and expose that as a web service. So that is what we'll be looking in the real-time jobs document. So we will call it a day. So any questions in the topics that we discussed today?
Hey, good evening, Rakesh, Rehan here.
Hey Rehan, how are you?
Yes, sir, going good. Just would like to know, so do you have any plan for the HANA classes?
Yeah, Rehan, I'm going to start pretty soon. I will update you on the schedule.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rehan. Sorry, Rehan. So when is your friend back from? I think he's on a vacation, right? So when is he back?
He will be back by, I think, 25th of January. And
Do we need to have the classes before that or after that?
it's up to you. Means there's no problem. Means I
Can you
will
check with
give
your
him.
friend's availability so that once we confirm?
He won't be available because he is in a. His plan is to travel. I think three countries in this 3 weeks. So he couldn't be available. I believe. But I already talked to him. I told him that if there's means any sessions going to be I'll start with that. And so he said okay, and he will get the recordings, and if he requires further, so he will join us later in the session, or if you will run another session, so he will join that one.
Okay, so we'll see, Rehan, like if he is comfortable or because as of now it will be one-on-one with you if I start the HANA sessions because I'm not taking for any others. I stopped taking because there are few issues on the server, and I'm teaching something, and when I'm trying to show the same thing on the server, it is not actually working. So that is the reason why I stopped the HANA sessions trying to work on the server. Went to the document for good, and with my movement I was not able to.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I talked to Ravi. Ravi means who's over in the IDES, so they give me the access, server access. So that's working fine. I don't know if you have the same access or it's a different one. But I have all the access.
Okay. Yeah, access is good, but technically 70% of what we cover in the subject is working on the system, but remaining 30% is giving some issues. Probably I have to check, Rehan. We will start.
Please, because I told the same thing to them, and they said no, they have fixed all the bugs and all the errors what's coming up, so it's now perfectly alright, and we can use it. That's what their version is.
We can give it a start. Yeah, I think in the new year we can give it a start.
Okay. So it's up to
you. Sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. So guys, thanks for joining today's session, and really sorry for troubling you on the last day of the year, but it had to go. And wish you guys a wonderful new year ahead, and hope you had a wonderful year. 2015, it was great for me, and I guess it was the same for you too. So we'll again connect back in
same for you.
Yeah, we'll again connect back in the next year. Till then, take care and have a good night and a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Just be careful when you're partying on the New Year's Eve.